Welcome to live stream number 45, 45, 45, 45. Do I hear 46, 45, 45? Uh, that, that's what I do when I'm getting ready to do my stream. I do a fake auction voice kind of a thing to get myself hyped, and ready to go. Well, I have the YouTube chat pulled up. Feel free to drop any questions or comments in the chat as we go, and I will respond in real time. First up on today's stream, we are going to be talking about remote work culture. This is a post that I saw come across my Twitter feed yesterday from GitLab. Awesome remote company, fully remote, fully distributed. And this blog post talks about informal communication. Super interesting. I think super valuable for any remote company. And so basically their thing is that you have to be intentional. As a remote company, you have to be really intentional about informal communication. And I've definitely seen this myself personally. It's not going to happen automatically. Informal communication just will not happen. People that are working remotely are going to feel, pressure anytime you're on a call or anytime whatever to just keep it focused on work, to be productive, and to their own detriment in the sense of really building relationships. And obviously one of the great things about having a non-remote team and a team that's local to each other is all the informal stuff that happens, the water cooler talk, all of that stuff. So as a remote company, of course, there's a ton of benefits to being remote, but one of the things you got to work harder on is how to cultivate those social connections. So I'm going to get into some of the specifics here. They have a lot of really, really great specifics on how they do things. So I'm going to just drill through these. So they've got their daily video call. Most people have something like this, so that's pretty standard. Breakout calls. So following the company call, everyone breaks into small groups for 10 to 15 minutes, to talk about non-work related topics. Look at that. Non-work related. So they are literally, and if you are the team lead, if you're the person responsible for budget, if you're the business owner, you're looking at this and you're cringing a little bit, right? Like, I'm supposed to pay my highly paid software developers to specifically talk about non-work stuff. And the answer is yes, because if they were in that work environment, in that water cooler, they would spend the 7 minutes, the 3 minutes, the whatever it is, talking about non-work stuff at the water cooler, right? And so you have to replicate that. And by being intentional about these small, it's a small chunk of time. It's not 4 hours. By being intentional about that, I think you're going to get massive productivity gains during the times when they're actually working, right? This is awesome too, this unconference, an in-person week-long event where we bring the entire company together in one location to get to know each other better. A lot of remote companies will do like a week, we'll do like a yearly in-person, maybe it's like a vacation type thing or a retreat. They'll do like a retreat. And I love the idea of an unconference specifically where it's an unconference is sort of a specific thing. It's sort of like a retreat, but it has a little more structure to it where, you are probably suggesting, ideas for talks, and then you're voting on those ideas on the fly to see who, just to upvote who most people want to hear talk about which topics. And then you hear those. So I love the idea of that specific structure for an in-person. Group conversations 4 times a week, get together to virtually discuss an area of the business. Okay, so that's pretty standard. Coffee chats, more details on that below, as well as co-working calls. Social hours, visiting grants. So this is a travel stipend, encourages team members to visit each other by covering transportation costs up to $150 per person they visit. So this isn't a massive amount of money. We're not covering a $2,000 flight, because those costs obviously do add up, but $150 is going to help encourage you, right? Maybe that's a train ride from I think a lot of them are in Europe. Maybe that's a train ride from Brussels to, I don't know, wherever you could go from Brussels. Maybe that's in the U.S. Maybe that's a flight from Austin to San Francisco, right? I think you can fly to San Francisco for $150, cheap flight, assuming you can maybe stay, maybe you have a place to stay so you don't have to pay for a hotel or whatever. So that's a cool thing. It's a small thing, but it's encouraging things in the right direction. Encouraging meetups is obviously smart. CEO House is super interesting. Members can get together in Utrecht, Netherlands, at the CEO's Airbnb free of charge. That's nifty, of course. If your CEO has a fancy Airbnb, Slack, Zoom, and then the last thing I wanted to talk about were these coffee chats. These are again places where they're intentionally encouraging social chats that are not necessarily work related. So you can schedule a coffee chat, and the idea is just to literally talk about coffee or share a coffee, talk about everyday things, share a coffee, tea, or favorite beverage, make friends, build relationships. So specifically, hey, we're encouraging you to take however long these are. Are these an hour or 15, 30 minutes? Whatever these are, to literally sit down and talk with somebody over coffee remotely. Like, how cool is that? That's a great idea. Like, I want to start doing this. I want to find a way to start doing this. And then, of course, there's the donut integration in Slack, which kind of matches people up to have one-on-one calls and sort of randomly meet each other. These team social calls are another way to randomly connect, sort of semi-randomly connect with people you don't know. So super cool ideas there that I think that all remote companies, whether you do that whole slew of things or not, I think you should be taking something from that. You should be intentionally encouraging those social connections. Of course, I'm hearing my kids yelling in the background here. So I am going to turn up my volume a little bit here. All right. So this is this was an interesting tweet here. I noticed I don't know if I want to mention that. I'm just hesitating because usually my content team will, any tweets I pull up, they'll mention them specifically in the content we put out, and I don't really want to do that. It's a little awkward, but basically, let me just put it this way. I saw a tweet from somebody that was saying that they wanted to hire developers and designers in the Bay Area. And I just asked, like, out of curiosity, why do you want to hire in the Bay Area? Why not remote? Because I'm such a obviously proponent of remote work. It's a lot of what the business that flows through Commerce Hero. I just talked about it in the previous segment on remote. Remote work is super interesting. And I saw something recently that even said that even in the Bay Area, it's getting to the point where, you kind of have to have a specific reason to hire in the Bay Area just because the costs are so out of control. It's almost like the default now is remote unless you have a very specific reason to hire in the Bay Area. So anyway, I just replied to that. And then the guy's reply was basically, we just want to have some people to jam out with the team in the Bay Area. And it's funny because as much as, this is me sort of admitting that as much as I'm a believer in remote work, there are strengths to local too. I just want to balance that out when I see other things because, me and my buddy Steve have been talking about tag teaming some stuff together, some projects together, and we've been working on some things and having a good time with it. But one of the things we always talk about is like how awesome it would be to work together in person, to do like live streams together here in the studio and just work on stuff together. So, it's funny because as much as I'm always pushing remote work, and I saw that reply and I was like, oh, we just want to jam out together. Something about that connected with my own desire to jam out with my buddy on some projects. And so there is something intangible about being together. I still think that 9 times out of 10, You're going to get so much more bang for your buck working remotely. You're going to get so much more access to talent. And even in the context of my specific case of my buddy, we are finding ways to work on things together remotely because he lives in a different city. So we are making that work. But at the same time, I do feel that desire of like, man, it'd be so awesome to actually be in person together. So there's a tension there. And my dog is now barking super loudly, which is really cool. I'm going to have to make sure that she is not in the house next time. Sorry about that. All right. Streamer life. The streamer life. All right, next up real quick. What I need to figure out is if there's a way I can mute my microphone so I can just like yell at my family to be quiet. Okay, so got some results back on this poll that I did, Magento B2B API coverage. Now, we only got 38 votes, so this is not a massive amount of people, but 50, the vast majority said that yes, API coverage is important to them. And so that's pretty much, I have spoken with I have heard from a number of individuals who are like agency owners and people that are doing a lot of work in this space. And actually, one of the people who replied here, Michael, who is CTO, talked about what they're working on there. But at any rate, so I think this is something that's important to get B2B API coverage ASAP. And so, yeah, that's pretty much it. This is just sort of a mini piece of content on that. All right. Next up, I'm starting to group together, if you'll notice. Okay, dog's barking again. I'm going to take a quick break. I will be right back. And we're back. that was awkward. And of course the dog's still barking. Turns out that the groceries are here, which is why the dog is barking. So I will have the dog in the backyard next time. All right. Little flustered, but let's carry on here. So I wanted to highlight what Fumin, Christoph over at Fumin is doing that I think is really smart with regards to his extensions. So in a PWA environment, we anticipate everything to be provided via GraphQL request, and this extends to extensions as well. Here's our GraphQL roadmap, and then there's a link here. And actually, I first saw Jamie over at JH tweet this and said, really smart. Other extension vendors should, basically all extension vendors, I think, should follow this model. And I found myself agreeing with that. So we'll just drill into this real quick. So basically what Christoph has done is that he has gone into all of his extensions and sort of itemized the status with regards to GraphQL endpoints. A lot of these are no front-end facing elements, so they're basically nothing to do there. Some of them are waiting on core functionality, things like that. Some of them, yeah, again, some of them may be made obsolete by a PWA environment. And then, he talks about places where they're planning to add some different resolvers. And things like that. So, so I think that's a really smart. A lot of people are trying to figure out what is the ecosystem going to look like how exactly are extensions going to integrate with PWA? That's something I've been trying to think through and trying to understand. Some things are going to be fundamentally different from pre PWA, where extensions could just hook right into front end and just output front end stuff within the layout structure. So some of that is changing, and this makes a lot of sense. Basically, as an extension, you are going to expose GraphQL endpoints or resolvers. Don't know exactly what a resolver is. I assume it's like some subcomponent of a GraphQL endpoint. So I think that extension vendors should all be road mapping this out, because everybody's trying to figure out, when is this going to be ready? When am I going to be able to launch PWA, and then which extensions am I going to be able to plug in and things like that. So this is going to help people to do some planning, and it's going to help people to incorporate your extensions into their PWA plans. So this is going to help you to get pulled into as many projects as possible. So hats off to Fumin on that, and hopefully everybody will follow suit. Okay, next up, this is just a quick thing, actually. One of the things I was looking for recently was just a really simple way to accept Stripe credit cards with no code. And so in the past, I've just whipped up a little bit of code to, throw up a Stripe form and tokenize, and then save the token on the back end. And it's pretty straightforward, but the stuff I'm working on some stuff right now and just trying to really do it no code. And I couldn't find, everything I found was wanted to charge additional percentages on top of the 3% you're paying Stripe. Like one of the things I looked at, which is a really cool product, they charge 3% on top of Stripe's 3%, which I'm like, bro, that's a lot of percentages. So these guys actually basically charge nothing, which is, I don't know how they're actually. There is an FAQ here, which is how do you generate revenue? And in the future, they'll offer a premium tier, opt-in, opt-out. So that makes a lot of sense. At the moment, service is at cost. So essentially, all you're paying are the Stripe costs, which makes sense, because how hard is it to spin up a service that just lets people accept, just throws up a payment form? Pretty straightforward. So, yeah, so that's basically it. I just thought that was cool. I was looking for something similar to this recently, and if you need to just throw something up real quick, that's a great option. All right, want to talk about TikTok real quick. So I have been starting to dip into TikTok. It's one of the things that Gary Vee talks about nonstop as a social media platform that has a lot of organic reach. A lot of people ignore it because they assume that, and what I'm realizing is that this video might be too heavy because it plays a lot of, or the homepage might be too heavy because it plays a lot of videos. So Gary Vee talks about it a lot, has a lot of organic reach. A lot of people think it's just for teenagers, because there are a lot of teenagers on there. But all of these social media platforms age up. Facebook used to be just for college kids. It aged up. Instagram, everything ages up over time. And so TikTok is in this early phase. And so, he's always talking about how you want to get on there and start playing with it, start getting in there and checking it out. So I've been checking it out a little bit and experimenting with creating some kind of TikTok style videos, which is kind of fun. And actually, I have to say, just using it is actually fun. It's hard to quite explain it. I follow Gary Vee. He's the only person I follow right now on TikTok. But I see his stuff on Twitter. I see his stuff on LinkedIn. I see his stuff different places, YouTube. And there's something about the experience on TikTok that it actually is more engaging. The type of content they put out there tends to be funnier, sillier, and just the style of it is really engaging. There's just it's hard to explain unless you just look at the content. And one really, really subtle thing in the UI that I noticed which actually sort of prompts you to focus more on one piece of content at a time, is that when it's not like most social feeds where you can scroll continuously through a feed. When you scroll, it goes to one video at a time. So if you scroll up, it just goes whoop and it shows you the next video. And then it just is stuck on that video. And if you scroll again, it takes you to the next video. So it's not like, and actually I found that as subtle as that is, it actually prompts you to just focus on that one piece of content on a time, because normally when you're scrolling through like Twitter, for example, you kind of like, you give something like 2 seconds of attention and then you scroll past it, and then you sort of are deciding if you actually want to read it as you're scrolling, and you're like making this micro decision within a matter of like a second or a split second. Whereas with TikTok, it's just like, okay, next. And then you might look at it for like a few seconds and decide whether you want to keep watching it. But even just the difference between a half a second and a few seconds is actually a little bit more focused. So I thought that was interesting, little UI tweak. And it's been fun checking that out. We're also going to try to start building that into Content Accelerator to be able, if you're doing video content, we're going to start building that in so we can produce TikTok style content based off of your long form content for you. So that will be an option. All right. Last thing, onboarding is everything. This is pull this up real quick. There's a tweet I saw from Brian Cassell, Twitter handle CastJam, which caught my attention yesterday. Onboarding is everything. In my experience, improving the onboarding experience has made more of a noticeable impact than improving anything else. True across every type of business I've worked on, from productized service to SaaS to training products. This is a thread here. Make it 100% clear the customer made the right decision to give your offer a shot, then exceed those expectations, then you win. And then he writes it up in an essay where he goes further into detail, which I sort of glanced at this article. But it's funny. This is so good what he's hitting on here, and it this is one of those things that I know. It's like, I know that with Commerce Hero, for example, my main business, there's so much of a better job I could be doing here. And it's one of those things that I know I should be doing a better job of it. And I'm always aware of that. But at the same time, I don't always prioritize it. And part of the reason for me is because, improving your onboarding is only going to benefit future customers, right? It doesn't really benefit your past customers. And so for me, one of the bad ways of thinking that I have is I'm like, oh, well, I don't want to do that because it's not going to do anything for my past customers. But like, you sort of discount how many customer onboarding experiences you're going to have in the future, which is just ridiculous. And it's so true, because as a user, if I have a great initial like that first month, it really is so critical. I'm in my first month with Integromat, for example, and I'm really enjoying it, but I am running into, with anything, you're going to run into some challenges. And so I'm tweeting things out, and, some companies are more responsive on social, response times on emails vary. Their email response times have been great. Their email support's been great. They're not as responsive on Twitter, which, some companies make that decision to go that route. And so that's part of it. Also, how discoverable is the product? I found their product to be really discoverable. How much documentation is there for things when you get stuck? What does the community look like for support that you want to get? So it's so important to have that. And as I look at that, I go, man, I got to do a better job. And a couple of things that Brian has worked on. So Productize is a training program, really that helps people to build productized services, which I think is super interesting. I'm really a fan of productized services, and I'm kind of building one now with Content Accelerator. And Brian has built his own in the past. What's the one I'm not thinking of, which is the content thing that he does. But anyways, so really I'm sure this is really fantastic content to check out. And also, Process Kit is super interesting. Is a SaaS that helps your team to build out processes for doing different tasks, and it combines sort of your documentation with your process checklists and thing like that all in one place. So this looks super interesting as well, and I need that's on my list of things to check out. But anyways, so yeah, onboarding is everything. That is all I have for you today. Apologies for the technical difficulties we had there, and I hope you have a fantastic Saturday.